Okay.
Chip's here.
You said wonderful legal counsel, Janie. That doesn't include.
That most definitely includes Jane, Mr. McQueen, and you can get off my list. I don't know. Councilmember DeChapo, I'm going to charge you an admission fee since Councilmember Waring is on this other meeting and he's scheduled to give the invocation. I'm going to task you with that responsibility. How about that?
In that case, I think it'll just be a moment of silence.
All right, well, I'm going to call to order the 3 o'clock meeting of the Real Estate Committee on November 30, 2020. We have a quorum present. I know the mayor and Councilmember Waring are in another Charleston Water Systems meeting. They've advised me to go ahead and proceed. We may not take a vote on a couple of issues, but at least we can get started and go through some business. I know we have some other folks who can make a presentation on the Daniel Allen Tennis Center. So we want to include them as well and make that, go ahead and have that presentation. So I am going to call on our council member who is not a member of our committee, Councilmember DeChapo, if she would either lead us in a moment of silence or an invocation.
Let's take a moment of silence. Amen.
Amen. Thank you. I hope everybody had a pleasant Thanksgiving. If anybody was like myself, I ate too much food, but did enjoy the company of family and some small groups of friends. So thank you all very much for joining us on the Monday after Thanksgiving. I think we're all well and ready to proceed with this other business. For the members of our committee, the first order of business is approval. No, I'll take it back. Those minutes are being deferred. So the first order of business is under item A, an ordinance authorizing the mayor to execute on behalf of the city a real property exchange agreement regarding America Street Ventures. Who is going to take that up for us on that particular item?
Councilmember Shahade, I'm going to start and then ask legal counsel Chip McQueenie to give any specific details that I may have missed. And thank you, sir, for the opportunity to present to real estate. The name of the agreement is a real property exchange agreement. And basically what it allows is for a property swap between the city of Charleston and America Street Ventures LLC, which is a LLC that was created by the Humanities Foundation for the purposes of developing properties in the east side of Charleston. And I would say this effort started many months ago. We presented this idea initially to the City Committee of City Council many months ago when this was first brought to our planning team with regard to the effort that the Humanities Foundation was undertaking. The premise is this organization wanted to build additional affordable housing in the East Side community. As you all know, they recently purchased the Archer School with help from the city of Charleston and the bond funds that we awarded to them. At that particular site, they are going to build 88 units of senior housing in the affordable category. They wanted to expand their opportunity to build additional affordable housing in that community along with the other services. And so on their own, they had begun to pursue properties in the East Side community. What they discovered after conferring with our planning staff is that the properties that they were looking at were identified in our Dutch Dialogues report as those that we did not want developed. We literally, and we are the city, we did not want those developed. We really wanted to maintain those properties as vacant parcel for stormwater management purposes. Knowing that they still had a desire to develop housing, again, the Humanities Foundation approached the city of Charleston, understanding that the city also had land in that community to basically exchange the parcels that they had under contract, one of which they had purchased, for the parcels that we have and that we own. And so what you see outlined on the first page of the agreement, in the second paragraph, it identifies the parcels that are owned by, or they are owned or either under contract by America Street Ventures, and then the parcels that are owned by the city of Charleston. And for those of us who like pictorials and illustrations, what you see before you are the properties owned by the city of Charleston in the pink or maroon, whatever color you might call that. And then the blue properties are those that Humanities Foundation would swap with the city of Charleston. The goal for Humanities Foundation would be to build affordable senior apartments on the properties that would be swapped between them and the city of Charleston. Those property income ranges would go from 30% AMI up to 120% of the area median income. And so within this agreement, there are inspection periods allowed, and I'm going to ask Chip to cover that. But the genesis is that ultimately the goal would be to build additional affordable housing, which is the goal of the Humanities Foundation, in this case, America Ventures LLC. And then the goal for the city of Charleston is to maintain the land that we have identified in our Dutch Dialogues report as land for stormwater management. Chip, would you elaborate on the agreement itself, and I will come in as needed. Thank you.
Yeah, and I don't know.
Chip, before you do that, let me just go back and make sure I'm clear on Ms. Shaw Johnson's presentation. And thanks for the screen. That the visual always helps. If you can come down, there you go, perfect. So
there you go.
Gianna, the property that is in blue belongs to the HFC now.
Correct.
And
yes,
that was
sir.
the property that, I just want to make sure I understood the opening comment that you made. That was a property that we now want to designate through our Dutch dialogues for stormwater management.
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay, I just want to make sure I was just clear on that particular point. And so this is really a swap for the mutual benefit for all the parties concerned if we do it this way. I got
correct.
it.
And that would be the goal. Yes, sir.
Okay,
absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to make sure I was clear on that.
Yes.
Any other committee members have a question before I turn it over to Mr. McQueenie?
And Chair Shahade, I just want to mention that Tracy Doran and her attorney are on conference call. If there were any questions of that organization, just so you're aware of that as well.
Okay. Yes, ma'am, Ms. Jackson, Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, thank you, Ms. Shaw Johnson. I was going to say the same thing. I know that Ms. Doran and her team are on the meeting, and I do think it would be prudent of us or strategic of us to let them at least explain their motivation for getting involved in this land swap. I think we've sort of had a history as a committee of always letting an applicant come before us, and I do think it's a helpful perspective.
Okay, well, let me hear from Mr. McQueenie first, and we'll swing back around. Okay, Mr. McQueenie.
And I don't know if Jane or anyone from Hainsworth is on the line, because I didn't draft the agreement, but I have reviewed it for this committee meeting. But essentially, some complications are that the parcels owned by the Humanities Foundation or under a contract to be purchased by the Humanities Foundation, the fair market value, I think both parties obtained appraisals. The fair market value of those properties is $1.395 million. And the fair market value of the city's properties shown in pink is $1.95 million. The difference in fair market value is offset by a right of first refusal. That's it's part of the it's called Schedule 27 to the agreement, but it essentially allows the city to, after the first 15 years of affordable housing and development, if the owner wants to sell it, the city would have a right of first refusal, and not only that, we pay 90% of the purchase price under that right of first refusal, not the entire purchase price. as far as the transaction of the swapping of the parcels, there's a 45-day from the date. This requires an ordinance, so it'll come back to City Council on December 15th. I don't think we have before Thanksgiving, I think we were at the status where we didn't have a signed agreement between the parties. And I have not heard back from Jane or Jeff on where that is, but it'll be presented for second reading on December 15th, and we probably should bring it back before this committee just in case there's any changes or anything. But as far as the swap, there's a 45-day inspection period from the date of the contract, which if it passes second reading December 15th will be 45 days from then, and then 30 days to close. Our property is under a VCC with DHEC. We purchased it part of the Cooper River Bridge redevelopment area. Not DHEC. Yeah, DHEC. So we're under an obligation to clean up our portion of the property for any contaminants, which I think are petroleum related. We have, I believe, in hand what's called a phase 1 environmental site assessment for the properties that the city would receive under this, and we would undergo further environmental testing during the 45-day period. A key issue for us is going to be whether or not there's contamination. If there's contamination on the property, regardless of what Dutch dialogues say, we may not be able, without great expense, to keep it in its natural state or not build it. You might have to cap it or something like that, in which case there's no reason for us to use it as stormwater management necessarily, at least not without great expense. Matt Fountain will be involved in that part of the decision and reviewing the environmental, but a key element will be the environmental portion for us, because it's if the purpose is to hold stormwater or to keep it in its natural state, we need to make sure we can do that under the current environmental conditions. There'll be a closing in which the properties will trade deeds, and affordable housing restrictions will be put on the property that's conveyed to the foundation for development. I think that's pretty much covers everything.
Yep, that's all of it.
Okay. Does any member of the committee have a question for Mr. McQueenie? So you said we both had our own appraisals done of all the properties involved. And I was looking to see if somebody from Stormwater Management was available on this committee meeting, but I didn't see anybody. So there's
I'm on the line, Councilman Shade. It's Matt Fountain.
Oh, there you are.
Yeah, if you have any questions.
Did you trade in your flip-flops for a tie today?
I did. I have no tie, but I have a collared shirt.
Welcome back from your well-deserved break from all of us.
Right.
Matt, tell us a little bit about the usability of these parcels.
Yeah, it's a good question, Councilman. So the Dutch dialogues, when they looked at this area, they were doing similar to what they've sort of had done with a little more detail in the Johns Island discussion, where they were sort of saying the kind of the lowest, wettest areas of the kind of the neighborhood should be reserved for where the water is naturally going to, and not basically built upon pushing that water onto other properties. So in this situation, the blue properties that are being proposed for conveyance to the city are generally about a foot to a foot and a half, possibly 2 feet. Without really detailed survey, it's hard to tell, lower than the kind of pinkish salmon colored properties. Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I mean, AECOM is still doing our evaluation work. I don't know how much easy, as Mr. McQueenie mentioned too, how much easy storage there will be or improvement to the area there will be on those properties. But I think it's more the potential for avoidance of those properties being developed in a way that harms the surrounding properties. It's much easier to develop the salmon colored properties with that extra 1.5 feet of elevation than it is to take sort of the absolute lowest properties and try to develop them in a way that doesn't cause any potential harm. It's certainly doable, but it's much more expensive when you have those very, very low lying properties. And that's always a challenge when you're building affordable housing units. So I think that's probably where we're leaning towards, is trying to shift the the development onto properties more suitable for it and leave a pathway for water management in the future. And that will be part of the work that AECOM will be doing, as they're currently doing their survey work out there now, is trying to figure out the best method, whether it's conveyance, storage, improvement, to use that leftover kind of sections of property to try to minimize the flooding issues that already kind of do exist and occur in this area.
This property may be used for passive stormwater management.
Yes, yeah, it's entirely possible. I think Mr. McQueenie got into some of the challenges that may occur with that potentially, but there are options. I mean, there's things you can do like soil removal and lining. On this type of parcel. It may not be left it's unlikely to be left maybe as pure green space. I think one concept has been open pond management, which might require liners if we went with that approach. There's potential for conveyance features for pipes or for other systems. I think the open water aspect is one that the planning department has looked at quite a bit and really likes from a design center perspective of kind of very much the Dutch dialogues of like bringing the sense of how water management works in the area. I mean, those are sort of the parcels that you'll see frequently in photographic work in the area, where you see kind of just standing water on those parcels during smaller rainstorms because they're at such low elevations. There's just nowhere for the water to go. So they've kind of, the Dutch approach in this area would say, well, let's kind of enhance that and make them actual open water features and show that that's where the stormwater is going and show that's how we manage stormwater, which might provide some benefit to the adjoining parcels to basically continue to have somewhere for their water to go. So we don't fall back into what has happened in much of this area, as well as the rest of the city, where if the parcels are subdivided into single family size parcels, they're exempt from most of the regulations for fill and for other stormwater requirements. And that's where you kind of get into what we've seen in many districts with sort of call it the fill wars or something similar, right? Where each person will build up their property higher than the surrounding property to avoid the flooding. And if that were to happen, say on these blue properties, and you were to subdivide those out, build them up, 3 or 4 feet higher, then the city parcels to the north would be much harder to develop because now all of the water from these parcels will be pushing onto those city-owned parcels. So I think what Ms. Johnson was looking for here was trying to find a agreement that worked with all the parties to say, hey, we all have values here and we all have similar interests here. How can we make the properties we all control work in the most efficient way possible to get affordable housing built at an advantage to the city while not causing stormwater problems on the adjacent parcels? So there is no perfect solution out here. That's why we're in the middle of spending currently, hundreds of thousands of dollars on drainage evaluation work and likely millions of dollars on improvement projects. But I think this is probably something that will certainly mimic more of what the water is trying to do in the area if you're going to build in the area.
Thank you. Does any committee members have a question for Mr. Fountain before I call Mr. McQueenie again? Okay, Mr. McQueenie.
And I just wanted to clarify, I'm not suggesting that I have no knowledge whether there's contamination on the blue properties. But when you're next to an interstate, it's called a recognized environmental condition that would show on your phase 1 assessment. And that's going to require you to do further analysis after you purchase the property, or if you can before you purchase the property, to see if there's contaminants. The usual, and I'm not an environmental attorney, my understanding is generally what you're looking at is petroleum type pollution from runoff from interstate highways. So obviously this was part of the bridge, and the bridge ran through the city's properties and maybe a portion of the blue properties, I'm not sure, but that's, this area of the city too, I'm worried about environmental contamination anyway, but I'm not suggesting these properties are contaminated. I'm just saying it would require further investigation because of the closeness to the former highway there.
So in addition to about a $60,000 differential in price, the other question or issue or concern is the environmental capacity of this property and what work the city may have to expend to make it usable for stormwater management.
Yes, sir. And that's part of our due diligence process. We'll investigate that and bring in Matt, and that'll be part of the due diligence. And I just want to give everybody a heads up that, to the extent there's a problem, that's likely to be the problem, is the environmental. Again, there may not be an environmental, and hopefully there's not, but That's one that light bulbs went off when you look at these type transactions in this area.
I
And
see that.
Councilmember Shea,
Yeah, hold on. I see that Mayor Tecklenburg and Councilman Waring have joined us. And I hope that they're flush with some extra cash in their pocket from their, I mean, that we get the thumbs up. Yes, ma'am, Mr. Yonasaw.
Great.
I don't want to cut you off. I did see them come on. I just want to make sure our record was
Sure.
clean. Yes,
Thank
you
ma'am.
said 60,000, it's 600,000.
600.
Right.
Yes, sir.
Right.
I just wanted to make sure you
Just
were.
a slight misplacement of a zero here and there.
A rounding
We've been
error.
dealing with millions and millions of dollars on these budgets, and after a while, the commas get misplaced, unfortunately. So, Mayor Tecklenburg and Councilman Waring, we're still on item A, dealing with this property swap on America Street for a senior housing, affordable senior housing to be developed. And Mr. Gianna Shaw, who else was on the call that you wanted us to hear from? Gianna?
Yes, sir. I was mentioning that Ms. Tracy Doran and her attorney are on the conference call if you all wanted comments from them.
Sure. This is, if y'all want you to speak about this and offer any insights, we're glad to hear from you.
Is this the site that, Chairman, Michelle Johnson, is this the units where it'll be named after Councilman Lewis?
No, sir. This is a new deal. We presented this idea to City Committee of City Council probably at the beginning of this year
Okay.
in the form of a property swap or an exchange between the City of Charleston and Humanities Foundation. The properties that we own, they would want to develop affordable senior housing on. The property that they have under contract, they own one of the parcels currently. We would seek to utilize for stormwater management.
Okay,
So
I
this
got
is
it.
a new process. Yes, sir.
And
Thank you.
Councilman Waring, also if you caught the last part of the conversation, the difference in price on the blue property, which is owned by the foundation now, and this reddish pinkish property that the city owns, the appraisal differential is about $600,000 with the city owning the more higher end appraised value. And as Mr. McQueenie and Mr. Fountain had talked about, if we obtain this property, it will be more consistent with stormwater management, with the Dutch Dialogue's recommendation. But we need to do some more due diligence on the suitability of those properties. And there may be an issue of some kind of environmental impact with those properties because of the proximity of the old bridge that was located over there. So there's a couple of issues here that we're talking through right now. And we do have the owners who are parties to this conversation available. And I do want to hear from them as well, if they are here.
Yeah, well, this is Tracy Doran. Would you like me to chime in at this point?
I lost my screen. Yes, there I am.
Yes. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing us to attend the real estate meeting this afternoon. And as Gianna presented, and Chip McQueenie has presented, this is a rather complex transaction that has evolved over this past year, and I really do appreciate the mayor and city staff and especially Gianna for continuing to try to move this forward and find a way that we can all have a win-win situation. We are excited about it from the Humanities Foundation. We have been, very vested on the east side for some time now, not only through our affordable housing efforts, but through our resident service efforts, our food deliveries, security cameras, lots of things that we've been involved in. And we really have been looking at the east side in a more holistic way. What can be done to solve some of the problems there, and how can we play a part? And so we sort of happened onto this, as Gianna explained, by looking at some of these lots that were available. And the lots in blue, just so everyone understands, those are currently zoned for single family. And if you look at the first sketch where you see the blue to the left, and then there is a blank white spot, and then you go to the other two blue parcels. 4 single-family homes have been built on that already, and that is the trend. The houses are tall, skinny, built up above flood, and as someone said before, they don't have to meet the same stormwater requirements because they're less than half an acre, they're smaller lots. So that is the trend here, and the concern would be if these lots aren't used, for stormwater drainage or taken off of the development map, that those would be built out. So our goal is to look at developing 78 senior apartments on the pink parcels, and then working with the city on the drainage for that. And that is something that we will be exploring with the city over the next 2 weeks before it comes back to city council, to make sure that we all, that we can do what we think we can do, because I know stormwater drainage is difficult there. And so we'll need to look at what our options are for the stormwater drainage, and we have engineers looking at that right now for the pink parcels, and how we can work with the city to accommodate any stormwater drainage that won't fit on that. But we also, and this isn't part of this transaction, but as part of this whole block, we also have the church under contract, and I believe the mayor has looked at it for a group that may be interested. But we feel that's an important part of this effort. It's on the corner of America and Cooper Street, and there's a lot of community support. Historic Charleston is very supportive of saving that church and figuring out how to complete that and really create something that the whole East Side and the city of Charleston can be proud of on that corner. I know there's so much going on with the pool development, the redoing of the pool and the other developments. And I was at the Grace Homes dedication open house, and it is a beautiful property. And as I stood on that top level and looked down over the bridge and could see the Archer School and all of that, there's just, a wonderful opportunity here. And I really appreciate the city and all the efforts that have gone into making this happen. And I understand that there is some price differential here, but without the stormwater drainage being available, that property may not be able to drain. So there's some synergism here that together this whole block may work, whereas separately it may not work as well. So again, those are some of the answers, that we hope to be getting soon so that we all know how to proceed. But I think that it's a great opportunity. And again, I thank all the city staff and the mayor for working to get it this far.
Okay, thank you so much. By the way, I think Ms. Giona mentioned 88 housing, and you said 78 units?
No, that's on the Archer School. And this is 78 here. The Archer School, we're doing 88.
The Archer School is 88. And so what's planned for these two reddish pinkish parcels are only 78 units?
That's correct.
That's
Okay.
correct.
Okay, all right. Yes, ma'am, Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I really appreciate hearing from Ms. Doran as the purchasing or the swapping party. I've been following this deal ever since it was presented to the Community Development Committee, and I really have gotten a lot out of just the deal making that we've had to do between the parties. I think that we are setting some sort of model that I think we should be talking about in next city journals and things like that. For this is truly urban conservation at its finest for all the right reasons. And I feel like, this is an opportunity that the city very happy to have with a stakeholder partner that has proven themselves, like Humanities Foundation, for all the affordability and the services that they've brought to a community that really has gone shrift in terms of city attention over the decades. So I know that we've got an ordinance to pass that this is going to, come back for a little bit of tweaking to make sure that the stormwater system design is going to work for both parties involved. But I do hope that we can give this a first reading on tomorrow and get on with this, because it's a brilliant project, and I fully support it.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
So picking up on that a little bit, I want to give my thanks to Tracy and her daughter Rosie and the Humanities Foundation for working with us so on this, because this truly, y'all, is a win-win-win situation. If you think about this Cooper River Bridge property that the city really got years ago, all the way from Meeting Street to America Street, this is going to fill it out. We're getting ready next month, I hope, or in the first quarter of next year, to break ground on the Lewis apartments in the next block. And then the Humanities Foundation would be able to build affordable housing in the pink spots that you see there. And then we had the Dutch dialogues that recommended that we utilize part of this property for water retention and to help with drainage in the neighborhood. And this is the exact creek bed of, I didn't even know this name existed until I looked on an old map after the Dutch Dialogues study that we had. This was Vardell Creek. This right where you see this blue water here on the map is where Vardell Creek used to run. And so we're reestablishing where water used to be. And so the neighborhood wins. We're going to be able to help address neighborhood drainage challenges. The neighborhood wins and our citizens by producing more affordable housing for our city and our citizens. You know, it's property that had come to the city for just this purpose. We have a long-standing trusted partner in the Humanities Foundation. Yeah, there's some more things we need to drill down on some particulars, but in concept, I just couldn't support this effort more. I think it really pulls together a lot of pieces that we've been yearning to do for the last few years.
By the way, we haven't had a motion yet to approve item A, so I think maybe it's good.
Move for approval. I move for approval.
The second?
Second.
I'll second.
Okay. All right. So any further questions or discussions?
Yeah, I do, Mr. Chairman.
Yes, sir.
I mean, I want to follow up on what the mayor said. I mean, several years back, even before the mayor got elected, believe it or not, there was some talk of selling this property where the bridge came down. And now when you see it being built out, kind of like the government envisioned, you know, this is supposed to help mitigate the community that was displaced years ago when the bridges were built. And this was part of that mitigation agreement as recorded. That vision is now unfolding, and I believe when all include Grace Homes and what will soon be James Lewis Housing Development and the Humanities Foundation, there will probably be more affordable units put back than was initially displaced when the bridge project came through, I don't know, 60 years ago, whenever it was. So, you know, when we get letters from professors at the college and we get the piece about, and I know their heart's in the right place, about, you know, defunding the police to generate $5 million, we have to find a way to properly report this information out to well-meaning groups that have very good objectives, so they can have the realization that the city is doing for many underserved communities and those who are less than, as scripture says. So great job. I look forward to them rising up. I rode through there after church on Sunday, Mr. Mayor, and as I said, the W.L. King's pool is looking great. The South Carolina State facility, the community center, that's another one that looking, I think they're getting ready to cut the ribbon on that. All those were a vision that's now up in reality. So thanks for everybody involved. By the way, Ms. Doran, how long are these apartments going to be? What's the affordability period on these units?
Gianna?
The initial affordability period, it follows the tax credit, which is 30 years.
Okay, all right.
And then we have a right of first refusal, council
And
member.
then a lot of times Humanities Foundation will renew those credits, which would extend them in the event, the agreement says, correct me if I'm wrong, whichever attorney was working on this, that in the event they don't renew those credits and that affordability, at that point, the city would have the right to buy the property back from Humanities.
All right, great. Wonderful. Well, thanks to everybody involved.
Thank you, Councilmember Waring. Well, I think this has all been well said. You know, I think our conversation and mindset on affordable housing has taken a sharp turn to support this much more than we have in the past. And the city's much more engaged. And this is going to be, if I heard correctly, affordable housing for seniors on top of that. And I think that's just another segment of our population that we need to pay a lot more attention to. And they're going to stay on the peninsula, which is even more of a benefit. The infrastructure is there for seniors to have more accessibility to other services. And the ones that you just mentioned, Councilman Waring, the other city amenities are going to be located nearby. It does sound a little off when you talk about a $600,000 differential, but I think this is more than just a price tag on appraisals. I think this is more of the usefulness of those properties that we're going to get back in return, and that's that old saying, some things money can't buy. This is one of those things I think that money can't buy, of the opportunities to do that. So I'm gonna call the question. All those in favor of approving item A on the agenda, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? The ayes have it. Okay, very good. And
Mr.
thanks to
Chairman,
everybody who was involved.
Mr. Chairman, one last thing on this. Mr. Mayor and Council Lady Wilson, Jackson, I'm sorry, Jackson.
You can tell the old timers on council.
Forgive me.
Just came from a Charleston water service.
Yeah, I know, that's what it came from. I just got off a meeting.
That's true.
You didn't call Mayor Tecklenburg Mayor Wiley this time, so I see.
Thank you for bailing me out on that one, Mr. Mayor. But one issue with, at that time it was SCE&G and now Dominion, about bringing in some underground electrification pretty close to this site right here, I believe. Did we ever get that work done? I know Ms. Dorn and those would be happy.
That's a block away.
It's a block away? Okay.
Next to the Lewis site, yes, sir.
Okay. So they don't have problem with power issues at this site? Maybe we can help out with it, in other words, because if that's a developer's cost, I'm sure that's not a surprise. Ms. Dorn's going to want to find out.
I'm sure in this area, we'll be talking about that over the next 45 days as we do due diligence. And it is a walk away. Either party can walk away within the 45-day period for, then service good use. So.
All right. Well, thank you.
Sure.
All right. We got to keep on moving because we have back-to-back committee meetings. We're going to take items B and C together as one item. And I think Sterling, you will lead us off with this.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. You all will recall that we brought the general terms of this project to you a couple of months ago in the form of a term sheet. We have since then fleshed out most of the details in the two agreements that are before you today for approval. There will be a third agreement coming at the next council meeting. So today we're asking you to review and approve the donation agreement and the second lease amendment. I'm happy to answer any questions specifically about the documents, but I would like to first introduce you to Ford Perry and Isaac Gruber with BMOT Capital, and they're going to give us a brief presentation on the project.
Go right ahead. Ford.
Thank you very much, and thanks for providing some time for us to walk through this. Let me pull up the document for everyone to see. Can everyone see that now?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Great. So I'll make this quick, but happy to stop for any questions. Just as an overarching comment, which we've shared with many others in the city, including the mayor over time, we're obviously really excited about this project for the community. I'm obviously speaking on behalf of the Navarros, Ben and Kelly, who are looking forward to making this gift and upgrading really a centerpiece of the community that needs some improvement, and we hope will really be a point of attraction for a lot of both athletes and performers over the next several decades. We've been working for quite some time on the potential renovation of the stadium. I'll come back and answer any questions with respect to the budget, but this gives you a snapshot of what we're proposing currently based on the drawings that we're going to share with you. So it's a significant commitment on the behalf of the Navarros, and it's obviously what we're talking about today. The overall objective is really threefold in terms of the renovation. One is to expand the seating capacity within the stadium. We'll show you where we plan to fill in the corners of the bowl on the upper deck to provide more seating. Second is really to improve the amenities and the appearance of the stadium for the general public. We've significantly increased the restroom, food and beverage, and sort of overall flow and experience for the facility itself, and also to improve the facility for the performers themselves, their back of house experience, which will enhance our ability to attract premium talent, not only for the tennis tournament, but also for concerts and other performances that we would expect to attract. And the last piece is to really improve the back of house operations. The stadium is currently constructed is very limited in its operations outside of tennis. It makes it difficult to attract talent to use the stadium as it sits today. We've worked around that for many years, but we're designing it to make it a really compelling destination for top tier performers. Our goal is to get the stadium online for the Volvo Championship in April of 2022. And we're working diligently to meet that deadline, even though it feels fairly far out. Hopefully the world will return to normal by then. So this gives you a flavor for what the stadium will look like, and I'll flip through the renderings and then show you a little bit more detail about how the interior of the stadium lays out. Today, the stadium really lacks a primary entrance. If you think about the orientation here, Seven Farms is over this direction, this direction and running down here. So we'll have a defined primary entrance for the stadium. This will be a ground level look at that. We're also going to add some skin and facade to the stadium to give it a little bit more character. Today, all of this bowl area is open. There's really no definition around the exterior skeleton of the stadium, so we've worked with the architects to add some more character to it. This shows the back side of what we're calling the stage house. The stage house is really the primary, one of the primary changes to the stadium. This will house all of the back office operations, everything from performer and athlete facilities on the ground floor. We'll have a media and broadcast level on the mezzanine level, really the second floor. And then on the top floor will be a club level for premium seating and view of the stadium itself. And I'll show you some of that layout and some more in a moment. This would be facing the trails, the Daniel Island trails to the rear of the facility. So this is sort of the south orientation of the stadium, if you will. Again, the back of house, this shows you the loading dock entrance. So this would be coming in from Seven Farms. So now we would have a designated loading dock entrance that we don't currently have, allowing much easier access to the stage side of the house and in the inner bowl. This is obviously a bird's eye view looking down at one of the primary additions. This is the canopy that we plan to add. This has multiple purposes, one of which will be protection for the artists during performances, but also a functional element of allowing us to hang speakers, lights, other needs from the performers without having to build scaffolding for each of the performances, which is really a detraction of the venue today for people who are considering it. I think this will also be a pretty interesting and really compelling aesthetic element of the stadium. One of the primary views you get from the stadium is obviously over 526 as you're coming onto Daniel Island or leaving the island. We've worked with the architects to try to incorporate some complementary elements of the surrounding area. You'll notice that these sort of spikes really reflect what are in the background, the cranes from the port, as well as the bridge in the far distance. And so we've tried to really complement the feel for the area. So this is looking back up at the canopy. You can see there's a mesh system up here to allow them to use that. And this is the front view of the stage house here that will provide the club level on the 3rd floor and then player amenities, et cetera, on the lower levels.
Let me interrupt you for 1 second. And Madam Clerk, our next Public Works meeting is at 4 o'clock.
That's correct.
So what happens if we run over on this meeting?
It'll just be postponed. It'll have a delayed start.
Okay, we can run over to the 4 o'clock hour?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry for the interruptions. I'd take care of that administrative issue real quick.
No problem. We'll try to be
if you
efficient.
could wrap it up a little bit for us, I'd be fine as well.
So this gives you a view of what we plan to do, the interior concourses today. There's very little concession stands, very limited, frankly, restrooms as well in the facility. This gives you a look of the interior suites that will now be facing center court. Today, there are restrooms that really fill that premium real estate within the stadium. We've moved the restrooms to the exterior of the stadium out here. And so we'll have premium seatings on the inside. The design element that we're shooting for is looking to make it feel like we brought the park from the outside to the inside. So we expect to have a lot of greenery in this space, really soft natural tones, et cetera. This is looking back to the restrooms that will be on the exterior, green walls that we expect to include in the space. Obviously a color palette change as well. Food and beverage venues that will be scattered around the stadium to provide more grab-and-go access for patrons that are more common in the modern stadiums that you see today. And this gives you a quick look at the bowl itself once we've filled in the upper deck seats. This is looking from the stage house up on the club level, back obviously over center court. Today, there's only a center section here, and then side sections on this side and a side section on this side. So we're looking to fill in the rest of the entirety of that bowl. This is a worthwhile look.
I'm going to cut you off forward. I think we've got an overall view of what we're talking about, and we've got other items on the agenda. But unless somebody from the committee has a specific question for you on what's proposed, I think we got a good flavor of what you're talking about. I'm sorry to cut you off a little bit.
That's totally fine.
Okay. So I think the first order of business is to entertain a motion to accept B and C. Is there so
Move for
motion?
approval, Mr. Chairman.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. All right. So, Ms. Mr. you want to go first?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I don't want this to become a hackneyed expression, but here we have yet another true win-win-win situation for this city and for the citizens of Charleston, and yes, for the Navarro family. Although one might argue, due to their extreme generosity, that we're a bigger winner than they are, but I know their heart is in it incredibly to make such an investment in a city facility. It's just almost incredulous. So my thanks goes out to Ben and his family for their commitment, for their generosity. And here's the thing, they won't do anything but first class. That's clear. And you see it in the design of what they're presenting to you today. And if it costs a little extra, as the numbers have gone up on this over the last year or two, they've been willing to step up to the plate and say, we don't really expect any more than what the city committed in the lease amendment in 2019. We're willing to pick up the difference to make this first class. So it's a great deal for us as a city. I did want to also point out, Mr. Chairman and my committee members, that I might seem a little nostalgic here, but I remember 25 years ago when I was working for the city of Charleston as the Director of Economic Development, and Mayor Riley had the opportunity to bring this tournament to Charleston. And he jumped at this opportunity because he knew that there was long-term economic benefit to having this facility in Charleston. Just in the last few years, they continually to update what the economic impact of the tournament is. I think the most recent number was over $35 million annual impact. That's when the festival's running, of course. Thanks to COVID, we got a year off. But as this facility is improved, that economic impact will even be increased. And as you also know, in our amendment we did in 2019, the city has the ability to add, once this is all completed, to add $1 a ticket. So we'll, unlike the River Dogs, we'll be able to help sustain our own maintenance obligation to the facility through that sharing of that $1 we'll be able to add to the ticket. So I fully support it, obviously, and I think it's a great benefit to our city and our citizens.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Hey, Ford, could I ask you to get rid of the screen share for us, please? Thank you, sir. Councilmember Jackson.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you, Mayor. I totally agree that, you know, it is a trite phrase, but win-win is something we shouldn't be shy of using whenever it applies. So just keep going. I fully support the changes to the terms, the minor changes to the terms, and the fact that we've got these two agreements in front of us today and tend to vote yes. The only one that really gives me great pause, and I'm hoping that it's just because it needs to be, you know, legally accurate, but to not subject the city's procurement policy for minority and women-owned businesses. Right now, it's just a goal for the city. The city has its own, you know, benchmark of a 20% complement in that regard of hiring minorities and women businesses. But if we did, it's not like we don't build the project. So I would really hope that if it can't be in the letter of the agreement, that it certainly is in the strong spirit of the agreement, that we would continue to want to hire businesses that are very important to the future of our culture and our economy. That's all I have to say about for it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Jackson. Any other members of the committee wish to speak on this? Councilmember the Chapo, as I called you, our guest council member. You're here for a reason, I'm sure. So anything you want to add or to this conversation?
Just here to listen in and answer any questions anybody might have. Obviously very supportive of the project and think it's nothing but a benefit to the city and to the surrounding area.
I figured as much. That would be your position. Yes, sir, Councilmember Waring.
I'm gonna pick up on what the mayor said going back in the day. Actually, Charlie Way was chairman of Commerce, if you remember, Mr. Mayor.
That's right. That's right.
And Family Circle Cup used to be a long-time tennis tournament down in Hilton Head, and they were getting ready to leave the state of South Carolina. And that's when Charlie Way, Mayor Riley, I actually chaired JEDA, the Job Economic Development Authority, which works in conjunction with Commerce on that. And at the time, Governor Hodges all jumped in. Helen Hill was involved as well, as you remember, Mr. Mayor, to get the resources to build that stadium that we have there in record time, by the way. So that tennis tournament would not leave and the financial impact would not leave the state of South Carolina. So good works happened back 20 more years ago, and this legacy continues. So certainly I'm gonna support this. I mean, this is just such a benefit to keep this economic impact in our city and in our state, frankly. So thanks to all.
By the way, Councilman Waring, and I charged Councilwoman DeChapo a admission fee. Since you were scheduled to do the invocation, I had her pitch hit for you.
All right.
As part of her.
I was doing the good Christian work on the other side, though. Just keep that in mind.
That's why you and the mayor were excused. Appreciate what y'all able to do. So I've talked to the mayor about this, and I'll be frank with how I feel about this. I just have my reservations. What I understand is the city has a $3 million commitment to do improvements on the property for like stairwell and some other issues that we're obligated to. There's not a time frame of when those improvements need to be made, and that's part of this deal is to be rolled into the $40 million improvement to the project. And of course, what they have proposed, a $40 million improvement to this stadium, is going to be massive, impressive. It's going to draw larger crowds. It's going to be a huge benefit to not just the Daniel Island community, but it's going to be a huge advantage to the entire city. And the city's surcharge on tickets are going to increase. My reservation is quite frankly this. This calls for the city to pump in $1 million of this right now. And I understand this comes from hospitality fees, which is we have available. I just have a reservation. I'm just being frank with everybody who's listening in on this, as to we're going to have a budget, another meeting tomorrow on our budget. We've got an $18 million shortfall. I just have my reservations about chipping in $1 million on a tennis facility when we're also talking about raising property taxes. Now, I think that Amy Wharton in the mayor's office have worked some magic again, God bless them, and that may subside a good bit. But I'm just being frank with everybody. I just see spending $1 million when we're trying to obtain $1 million here and $1 million in. I think the mayor and Councilman Waring had success with their earlier meeting this afternoon on finding some other monies for us. But that's my reservation, and I'm just telling that up front as to my concerns when we're asking people to maybe pay more in property taxes at the same time than this $1 million coming in. Yes, sir, Councilman Waring.
Let me help you out with that, Mr. Chairman, in that, a lot of those stairwells, maintenance issues, we have that obligation anyway.
I know that.
Even if this wasn't happening, obviously with the private-public combination of gracious investment by Mr. Navarro and his family, that's going to be stimulative to the economy. So when those when the construction begins out there and the spending begins, obviously money's going to be pumped back into the local economy, which eventually some of that finds its way back into the city's coffers. So I hear you on that, but that's an obligation that we can afford because it makes economic sense to help create an investment that is going to benefit not only the region, but the country. I mean, that's an international tournament. How many people have come to that tournament and bought a house in the Charleston area? I mean, I probably can't even measure that. So, so I think I hear you on that, and I share your concern. But at the eventual end, this will be a positive stimulus back into the local Charleston economy. So just rest with that one. I think that'll help you a little bit on that.
Thank you. Councilmember Jackson.
Yeah, I have to agree. I do feel like this comes under the category of entrepreneurial, spend money to make money. And I think that the exponential opportunities that this $1 million will bring forward, first of all, it'll generate another 40 million of improvements that the city never would have found its way to provide. So that in itself is a huge leverage of 1 to 40. And then we have another 2 years or 3 years to put in the extra $2 million. And we're in the driver's seat about when we do that. So I do feel like it's a very lopsided deal that benefits the city's interest long-term without having to have an inordinate amount of skin in the game that we can't find right now in our own budget. So I would hope that we would just, take the long view on this and make this the opportunity that it will be.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor.
And Mr. Chairman, I'll just add to those comments that there's no impact to the general fund, that we did have enough in our hospitality accommodations budget to fund our contribution to the general fund and allow this payment to stand. So in fact, we had allocated it in the 2020 budget, I'm sorry, and had pulled it back. But anyway, the flow of making that commitment is frankly preferred that we do it over a period of time rather than if you put it off from now until the next year, you'd have to come up with $2 or $3 million all at one time. So it doesn't impact the general fund and it does spread it out. I think it's again, I think it's all a win-win for us.
Yeah, and my question would have been if we could defer the entire $3 million until later on in the project, even after construction begins or something like that, just to lay that outlay of funds. But I hear y'all. I mean, I respect all of y'all's comments and opinions on that, and I certainly do recognize that the city's involvement with this project going back 20-something years spurred that. With this project and with Bishop England High School being located on Daniel Island was the stimulus that everyone was looking for the development of Daniel Island. And we've benefited from that. There's no question about that. Any further questions or discussions? Councilmember Rappel.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just had a quick question. I see the value in this. I see the leveraging of private resources here, but my question is if it's one thing for the city to maintain maintenance responsibilities under the current structure that's out there, but when you've got a $40 million project out there, what are going to be our long-term maintenance obligations? Because it would seem to me that it would sort of scale up commensurate with that, and I just wanted to see if there was anything built into this agreement that would sort of address that issue, because as we all know, when the city's in the real estate business, it has these maintenance issues come up from time to time. We see that with the Joe, and I just wanted to see how that issue was addressed as part of this arrangement.
I'll turn to Sterling to see if she can answer that for us.
There's not going to be too much changing as far as what the maintenance obligations are for each party. However, what is built in is that the $2 million that the city will contribute 3 years after completion of the project will be kept in a restricted account for the sole purpose of capital repairs for the future. And so that won't actually be spent on the construction project, but will be reserved for the future. And then the other is what the mayor mentioned about the $1 ticket fee that will accrue to the city once this is completed. And that $1 ticket fee will help pay for maintenance in the long term.
Do we have any estimate that maybe our visitors can respond to this? How much more of the seating capacity is going to be impacted once these improvements are completed?
Sure, I can answer that, Councilman Shade. We're looking at an additional 3,000 seats per for concerts, Put it in reference, I would say this would mean we'll be somewhere between $140,000 and $250,000 a year if we apply that dollar per ticket as we sit today.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks for jumping in on that. Any further questions or comments? And certainly, I think in a comment I made, our commitment on the $3 million is not defined as to the time frame in the existing contracts. Is that right?
That's correct. And the $3 million just comes from the city's estimate of what the repairs that we are obligated to make would cost for the guardrails and the stairwells, and also some painting that needed to be done for the structure. So those 3 items were included in Exhibit B of the 2019 amendment. And so that was the city's estimate to complete those repairs. That's where the $3 million figure comes from. And so the way that this is structured is the first $1 million would be paid now with the execution of the agreement, and that would be spent on the construction. But the remaining $2 million would not be payable until 3 years after completion of the project. And at that time, it would then be reserved for future capital repairs.
Got it. Okay, any other questions, comments, observations? Call the question. All those in favor say aye.
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 No.
Aye.
No. Councilmember Pell, is that a yes or no?
I'll vote for it.
Okay, thank you. All right, the motion passes. We're on item number D. Who's going to carry the ball for us on this one? Janie, is this you? Item D is to authorize the mayor to sign documents with the Commissioners of Public Works for a permanent easement. Who's going to address that for us? Anybody?
I can address that one, Councilmember Shade. This is, I believe, an easement agreement for CWS for the forensics lab, the new forensics lab out on Bees Ferry Road.
Okay. Is there a motion to accept item D?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second.
Any further questions or discussions about this? Mr. Benjamin, are you here to talk about that project? I see.
No, sir. Next one. The next
All right.
next.
I'm not trying to volunteer you,
The next one.
but your visual just popped up. Any further questions or discussions? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? The ayes have it. Item E is approval of a lease agreement with the SCDOT to establish a master lease of certain areas adjoining the right-of-way of Interstate 26, Highway 17, and Highway 30.
Move for approval, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Second. Okay. Mr. Benjamin, I guess you were on the call for this one, I suspect.
Yes, sir. I'll be really quick. This is something that the city's been working on for a very long time. There's a number of different city staffs that should get credit for coordinating together to make this happen. This agreement really opens up the door for how we can reactivate the underpass area of I-26 in combination with our 1.6 mile area of the eventual low line. Just to kind of highlight things that are specific in there and what leverage it gives us, and happy to take any specific questions. Chip is on here too. We get into the legal aspects, but one, it allows us with affordable housing that's adjacent to the lease agreement area to have exclusive parking and not just public parking. So for example, the project that's happening right near Sumter behind the Housing Authority property will be able to have parking specifically for its development. Two, language that allows us to have as much design flexibility as possible. We were careful not to be specific in the document, and SCDOT was in agreement with this. So even with how we build up to the piers and the columns gives us a lot of flexibility as to what we can do when it comes to recreation, when it comes to parking capacity and otherwise. Three, the ability to not just coordinate with the district office, but if we happen to get into an impasse with the district office, the ability to go directly to the Deputy Secretary of Engineering with anything that happens from a design perspective. The next one, just some specifics around drainage. There's some abilities to improve aspects within the lease area, but they did do some limitations there in terms of benefits to private parcels and what agreements would be there. And then the ability to use revenues. So basically all revenues that are generated from the lease area can be used for the lease area for all the different aspects of upfit, construction, and maintenance as well. So kind of just giving you some summary around that. I think it's going to be amazing that we've not just gotten to this point, but what abilities will allow us to do. The fact that there's so much flexibility within this document, I think is a benefit to us in the short term, but also in the long term as well. So take any questions that you all have.
Any questions for Mr. Benjamin? Yes, ma'am, Ms. Jackson.
I don't really have any questions. I really like the way you mapped it all out for us, Mr. Benjamin. And I'm laughing because surely there is some sort of journal we can put this deal into as well. The fact that you've gotten, your counterparts at SCDOT to do something that is entrepreneurial and innovative and works to the benefit of the location that is being served. I mean, I think it's a remarkable breakthrough in just relationship building. I know all of the time you spend on that behind the scenes. So thank you for hanging in there with all of your colleagues at the state level and bringing us home something that is a really cool agreement. Thanks.
Yeah, the Deputy Secretary Colvin, and then also Mike Barnby, who's the Director of Right of Way, were extremely helpful in the process. So Mayor made some calls too. So
very good. Any further questions, comments? We'll call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Aye. Any opposed? Ayes have it. Last item on our agenda is item F, which is a annexation in 2891 Doncaster Drive in District 10.
I'll move for approval.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, all those, any further discussion we need to have on this annexation? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right. Any further business to come before this committee? I appreciate everybody's comments and concerns, particularly on the Daniel Island Tennis Center. We will be adjourned, and Councilwoman Waring, we start our next meeting. Can you give me about 5 minutes before we jump into the other one?
Yeah, it'll only be a small fine, that's all.
Well, I'm not going to go anywhere to get us another $1 million like you and the mayor did, but
Yeah, right.
I need a potty break.